So you think you know how to cook? You think you've seen every kitchen hack the internet has to offer. But I promise you, what the Chinese have been doing in their kitchens for generations will make you look at your stovetop, your fridge, and your entire relationship with food in a completely different way. These are not Pinterest hacks. These are not influencer nonsense. These are real, practical, battle-tested techniques that hundreds of millions of people use every single day, and most Americans have never even heard of them. We are counting down all 31, starting from the bottom and working our way up to the one that is going to genuinely change how you cook forever. Stay until the end, because number 1 is something you can use tonight. Let's go. Number 31. Save your vegetable blanching water and use it as a base for light soups. When Chinese people blanch their greens, they never throw that water down the drain. That water now contains water-soluble vitamins, minerals, and a subtle vegetable flavor. Pour it into a container, season it lightly, and you have a delicate soup base ready to go. Americans dump incredible nutritional value down the sink every single day without realizing it. Number 30. Use a wooden chopstick to test your oil temperature instead of a thermometer. Stick the dry wooden tip into the oil. If tiny bubbles form slowly around the chopstick, your oil is around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. If the bubbles are fast and vigorous, you are at frying temperature, around 350 degrees. Chinese home cooks have never needed a dedicated oil thermometer because this technique is precise enough for most frying needs and requires zero special equipment. Number 29. Freeze your meat for 20 minutes before slicing it thin. Chinese stir-fry recipes demand paper-thin slices of beef, pork, or chicken. Room temperature meat slides under the knife and tears, but partially frozen meat firms up just enough to hold its shape and slice cleanly. This is how every Chinese restaurant gets those impossibly thin, even cuts that cook in literal seconds inside the wok. Pop your protein in the freezer while you prep your vegetables, then slice it when you are ready. Number 28. Rinse your rice until the water runs clear, and here is why that actually matters. The milky, cloudy water coming off unwashed rice is excess starch on the surface of each grain. If you cook rice without rinsing, the surface starch turns into a thick paste that makes your rice clumpy and sticky in a way that is not intentional. Chinese people rinse their rice as an automatic, non-negotiable step. You are not washing away the nutrition, you are washing away the surface coating that ruins texture. 2 to 3 rinses and your rice will cook up fluffy and separated every time. Number 27. Use Shaoxing cooking wine to eliminate the funky smell from any meat. You can find Shaoxing wine in almost any Asian grocery store and increasingly in regular supermarkets. When marinating beef, pork, or chicken, add a tablespoon of Shaoxing wine to the marinade. The alcohol compounds in the wine chemically bond with the odor-causing trimethylamine molecules in meat and carry them away during cooking. The result is cleaner, less gamey-tasting meat every single time. If you cannot find Shaoxing wine, dry sherry is the closest substitute. Number 26. Steam your eggs instead of boiling them for the most effortless peeling experience of your life. Chinese home cooks place eggs directly in a steamer basket over boiling water for about 13 minutes. The steam surrounds the egg with gentler, more even heat, and the result is that the egg white contracts slightly away from the shell, creating a natural air gap. Peeling becomes almost absurdly easy. No more standing at the sink, picking off tiny shell fragments and losing half your egg white in the process. Number 25. Add a small piece of dried tangerine peel to braised meat dishes. This is a classic Chinese technique most Americans would walk right past in an Asian grocery store. The dried peel contains aromatic compounds and citrus oils that cut through the heaviness of braised pork or beef and add a bright, complex layer of flavor that you cannot quite identify but absolutely cannot ignore. You only need a piece about the size of a quarter. It does not make your food taste like orange. It just makes it taste mysteriously, incredibly good. Number 24. Use the back of a knife to tenderize meat by gently pounding it in a crosshatch pattern. Chinese chefs use this technique specifically for beef and pork intended for stir-fry. The blunt force breaks up the connective tissue fibers without cutting through the meat, which means the fibers shorten during cooking instead of contracting into a tough, chewy bite. After pounding, the surface area also increases, which means your marinade penetrates much faster and more evenly. 5 minutes of this technique completely transforms a tough cut. Number 23. Velvet your chicken or beef in baking soda for incredible tenderness. This is one of the most important secrets behind why Chinese restaurant meat is always so unbelievably silky and soft. Coat your thinly sliced meat in a small amount of baking soda, about 1/4 teaspoon per pound. Mix it through and let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes. Then rinse it off thoroughly before cooking. The baking soda raises the surface pH of the meat, which interferes with the proteins bonding too tightly during heat, keeping every bite tender and juicy instead of rubbery. Number 22. Use cold water to start steaming certain vegetables and room temperature water to start others. Chinese cooks understand that dense vegetables like carrots and broccoli stems need to be placed into a cold steamer so they heat gradually and cook evenly all the way through. Leafy greens, on the other hand, go into an already boiling steamer so they cook fast and stay bright green and crisp. This single distinction eliminates the frustration of vegetables that are either raw in the center or mushy on the outside. Number 21. Always heat your wok or pan until it's smoking before adding oil. Chinese chefs call this getting the wok hot first, oil second. When you add oil to a cold pan, the oil sits there and soaks into the surface. When you add oil to a screaming hot pan, it forms an almost non-stick layer through thermal polymerization. Food slides, sears, and chars with that signature wok hei, the smoky, slightly charred flavor that you absolutely cannot replicate by starting cold. Your home stove will never get as hot as a professional wok burner, so you need every degree of heat you can get. Number 20. Make a flavor base by combining ginger, garlic, and scallion together before adding anything else to your pan. Chinese people call this the holy trinity of aromatics. You do not add them separately at random intervals. You smash a piece of ginger, roughly chop garlic, and cut scallions into sections. Then add them all together to your hot oil and let them sizzle and bloom for 30 seconds before anything else enters the pan. This creates a layered aromatic foundation that saturates the oil and gives your dish a depth of flavor that is completely impossible to achieve any other way. Number 19. Use light soy sauce and dark soy sauce as two completely different ingredients. Most Americans grab any soy sauce bottle without thinking, but Chinese cooking treats these as entirely separate condiments. Light soy sauce is thinner, saltier, and adds flavor. Dark soy sauce is thicker, slightly sweet, and adds deep mahogany color to dishes. If you use dark soy sauce the way you use light soy sauce, your dish will be overpoweringly sweet and almost black. Learn to use them together, one for taste and one for color, and your Chinese cooking will improve dramatically overnight. Number 18. Press tofu under a heavy cutting board for 30 minutes before cooking it. Tofu is packed with water, and water is the enemy of browning. When you try to pan-fry tofu without pressing it, that internal moisture steams the surface and prevents the Maillard reaction from happening. No Maillard reaction means no golden crust. Chinese cooks press their tofu as a standard preparatory step, often wrapping it in clean kitchen towels and stacking heavy pots on top. The result is tofu that develops a genuinely satisfying, crispy exterior. Number 17. Add a small amount of sugar to your savory dishes to balance the flavor rather than to make them sweet. Chinese cooking regularly incorporates tiny amounts of sugar in stir-fries, braises, and marinades. This is not about making food sweet. It is about the principle of flavor balance. A small pinch of sugar suppresses bitterness, rounds out sharp acidity, and creates a sense of depth and completeness in savory dishes. The amount is typically so small that you cannot taste it directly, but its absence makes everything taste slightly flat. Start with half a teaspoon per serving and adjust from there. Number 16. Use a spider strainer instead of a colander to drain noodles and blanched vegetables. Chinese home kitchens all have this wide, shallow wire mesh tool with a long handle. The genius of the spider strainer is speed and control. You can scoop noodles directly out of boiling water into your saucepan, bringing exactly the amount of starchy cooking water you need with them, without draining the whole pot and losing that precious liquid. This is how Chinese noodle dishes get that silky, perfectly coated sauce that clings to every strand. Number 15. Store fresh ginger in a jar of dry sherry or rice wine in the refrigerator. Most Americans buy a knob of ginger, use a small piece, and watch the rest shrivel into a dry, moldy lump at the back of the fridge within 2 weeks. Chinese home cooks discovered that submerging peeled ginger in rice wine or dry sherry in a sealed jar keeps it perfectly fresh in the refrigerator for up to 3 months. As a bonus, the ginger-infused wine becomes an excellent cooking ingredient in its own right. Number 14. Cut vegetables on a deep diagonal instead of straight across to increase surface area. When Chinese cooks prep vegetables like bok choy, celery, or snap peas for stir-fry, they slice at a steep angle rather than cutting straight down. This is not just for visual presentation. The diagonal cut dramatically increases the surface area of each piece, which means more contact with the hot wok surface, faster and more even cooking, and better absorption of sauces and seasonings. Everything cooks faster, tastes better, and looks more elegant. It takes literally 0 extra time. Number 13. Use cornstarch in your marinades to create a protective coating on meat. This is a foundational technique in Chinese cooking called coating or dredging in the marinade stage. Adding a teaspoon of cornstarch to your soy sauce, ginger garlic marinade creates a thin, clingy coating around each piece of meat. When that coated meat hits the hot wok, the cornstarch seals in the moisture like a protective jacket, keeping the interior juicy while the outside gets that beautiful, lightly glazed, slightly chewy surface. It also helps the sauce adhere to the meat instead of pooling at the bottom of your plate. Number 12. Reuse your frying oil after filtering it through a fine mesh strainer lined with cheesecloth. Chinese frugality in the kitchen is legendary, and this practice is both economical and practical. After deep frying, once the oil has cooled completely, pour it slowly through a cheesecloth-lined strainer to remove all the burnt particles. Those dark particles are what make oil go rancid and develop bitter, off flavors quickly. Store the filtered oil in a dark glass container in a cool place. Clean oil can be reused 3 to 4 times before quality degrades noticeably. Number 11. Add a few drops of sesame oil at the very end of cooking, never at the beginning. Chinese cooks treat toasted sesame oil as a finishing oil, not a cooking oil. The delicate aromatic compounds that give sesame oil its distinctive nutty fragrance are volatile and heat sensitive. They evaporate and burn within seconds of hitting a hot pan. Adding sesame oil during cooking is essentially a waste. Add it to your finished dish right before serving, or drizzle it into a sauce after you remove it from heat, and suddenly your dish smells and tastes like a proper Chinese restaurant. Number 10. Steam fish with ginger slices inside the cavity and on top, then pour sizzling hot oil over it at the end. This 2-stage technique is how the Chinese achieve perfectly cooked, incredibly flavorful steamed fish. The ginger neutralizes the fishiness during steaming from the inside out. After the fish is cooked, you drape fresh scallions and a little soy sauce over the top, and then immediately pour a ladle of screaming hot oil over everything. The hot oil flash cooks the raw scallions, blooms the soy sauce aromatics, and creates that sizzle and fragrance that is absolutely theatrical and absolutely delicious. Number 9. Use a cleaver for everything, including tasks Americans would never attempt with one. Chinese chefs use their rectangular bladed cleaver to mince garlic, chiffonade herbs, smash ginger, Scoop vegetables off the cutting board and even crack open shellfish. The weight of a Chinese vegetable cleaver, which is thinner and lighter than a Western meat cleaver, does the work for you. The broad blade is used as a bench scraper, a spatula, and a transfer tool simultaneously. Owning one Chinese cleaver and learning to use it correctly replaces 5 different tools in your knife block. Number 8. Blanch vegetables in salted, boiling water for exactly 30 to 60 seconds and immediately transfer them to ice water. Chinese restaurants achieve those impossibly vibrant, brilliant green vegetables through this technique called shocking. The rapid boiling sets the chlorophyll and cooking stops the instant the vegetable hits the ice bath. The difference between shocked and unshocked broccoli, for example, is the difference between neon green and army green, between crisp and limp. Chinese people serving vegetables at a dinner party would never skip this step. Americans skip it every single time and wonder why their vegetables look sad. Number 7. Make your own Chinese 5-spice blend at home to understand the full flavor profile. The 5-spice powder you buy in a jar is often old, stale, and missing the vibrancy of freshly toasted whole spices. The Chinese approach to this blend involves star anise, Sichuan peppercorns, cloves, Chinese cinnamon bark, and fennel seeds. Toast them separately in a dry pan until just fragrant, then grind them together. Fresh 5-spice is so dramatically more aromatic and complex than the prepackaged version that many people who claim to dislike 5-spice change their minds completely. Number 6. Use oyster sauce as a finish for stir-fried greens to add incredible umami depth in seconds. Chinese home cooking relies on oyster sauce as an almost magical finisher for leafy greens. Once your vegetables are cooked, push them to the side. Add a tablespoon of oyster sauce to the hot pan surface briefly. Then toss everything together. The brief contact with the heat caramelizes the sugars in the oyster sauce slightly and creates a glossy, savory coating that elevates the simplest vegetable into something restaurant-worthy. This takes approximately 15 extra seconds and costs almost nothing. Number 5. Season your wok by cooking it through a process of high-heat seasoning with oil and scallions. A well-seasoned carbon steel wok is a non-stick surface that is actually superior to Teflon in many ways. Chinese cooks season a new wok by heating it until it smokes, wiping it with a thin layer of oil, letting it smoke again, then stir-frying a large amount of scallions and ginger vigorously around every inch of the interior surface. Repeat this 2 or 3 times. The oils polymerize into a hard, slick coating that builds up over years of cooking. A properly seasoned wok passed down through generations of Chinese families develops a near magical patina. Number 4. Keep a small bowl of water next to the stove while stir-frying and splash a tablespoon in whenever your ingredients start to dry out or stick. This is a technique Chinese home cooks use instinctively, but almost never explicitly teach. That small splash of water into a hot wok creates a burst of steam that deglazes the stuck bits from the bottom, prevents burning, keeps protein moist, and actually helps finish cooking thicker vegetables through a momentary steam bath. It gives you control over the heat and moisture balance in real time. Professional wok stations have water taps directly overhead for this exact reason. Number 3. Use the Chinese method of red cooking, Hong Shao, to transform cheap cuts into extraordinary meals. Red cooking means braising meat low and slow in a combination of soy sauce, Shaoxing wine, sugar, and whole spices like star anise and ginger. The technique gets its name from the deep, lacquered, reddish-brown color the meat develops. What makes this method remarkable is that the combination of sugar and soy creates a self-basting glaze that continuously coats the meat as it simmers. Cheap pork belly, beef shank, or even chicken wings become meltingly tender, deeply savory, and visually stunning. Chinese people have been using this method to stretch inexpensive proteins into celebratory meals for centuries. Number 2. Learn to make a proper slurry and add it at exactly the right moment. Cornstarch slurry, which is just cornstarch mixed with cold water in a 1:2 ratio, is the thickening agent that gives Chinese sauces their signature glossy, silky, clingy consistency. The critical mistake most Americans make is either adding dry cornstarch, which clumps catastrophically, or adding the slurry too early and cooking all the thickening power out. Chinese cooks add the slurry during the final 60 seconds of cooking after the heat is slightly reduced, then stir constantly as the sauce transforms from thin and watery to perfectly coating the back of a spoon. The moment it glosses, you pull it off the heat immediately. And number 1, the trick that is going to change your cooking more than anything else on this list. Chinese people do not cook everything together. They cook ingredients separately and combine at the end. This is called the principle of sequential cooking, and it is the single biggest reason home-cooked Chinese food tastes different from restaurant Chinese food. Proteins are cooked first, removed from the wok, and set aside. Aromatics bloom in fresh oil. Vegetables are cooked in order of density and cooking time. Everything comes together for a final 30-second toss at the highest possible heat. When you crowd your pan with everything at once, everything steams and nothing sears. The temperatures drop, moisture releases, and you get a stew instead of a stir-fry. Chinese restaurant chefs work with a sequence, not a pile, and the difference is night and day. Start with the ones that require the least equipment, like velveting your meat, using sesame oil as a finisher, and rinsing your rice properly. Build from there. The more of these you incorporate, the more your cooking is going to evolve in ways that will genuinely surprise you. If you found even one of these useful, hit the like button right now because it helps this channel reach more people who are out here cooking sad, mediocre stir-fry and not knowing there is a better way. Subscribe for more content like this, and tell me in the comments which of these 31 you are trying first tonight.